board here today. It's a bit hard to see because there's so many people around it, but it's got a picture of somebody on the right looking well fed and comfortably off, who is apparently supporting billionaires. I'll leave you to guess who that is. And on the other side it says money in your pockets with Labour. Some of you will have seen the Channel 4 programme. 4 million children in Britain living in poverty. 137,000 children with nowhere safe to live for sure this Christmas. Food banks running out of food and making desperate appeals to try and get more in. And many people trying to struggle on universal credit, can't pay their bills. And 1 million people on 0 hours contracts who don't know what their wage is going to be from one week to the other. And they say there's not a choice in politics. There is a very, very clear choice. In 2010, the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats made a choice. They could have invested in the future. They could have funded education properly. They could have funded social care and mental health services properly. They could have maintained that system of benefits and indeed improved them, because even then they needed improvement. What did they do? They made a very specific choice on their behalf, which was to cut services supplied by local government, to freeze benefits, to freeze public sector wages, to treble university tuition fees, to even charge people for taking an employment case to a tribunal. And we've had 9 years of this austerity. 9 years when David Cameron said, we're all in it together. Excuse me, since 2010, the number of billionaires in Britain has grown to 150. The number of people living in absolute poverty has increased. The gap between the richest and the poorest has got bigger and bigger and bigger. And they say our manifesto is not affordable. I simply say this: as a country, can we go on like this any longer? Can we go on? Can we go on with more poverty, more inequality? Can we go on with this sort of process? Our manifesto, carefully prepared, carefully costed, all of it carried out, would merely get us to the level of public service provision of France or Germany. That's how far backward we've gone in this country, thanks to the coalition governments that we've had. Our manifesto offers real hope, real opportunity and real change. And I want you all to recognise the importance of this election. 8 days to go, 8 days to make a decision on who you want to be your MP, who you want to be in government, who you want to be campaigning to change things and be on your side. And if anything sums up this Tory government more than anything else, it's their treatment of our National Health Service. The National Health Service is Labour's proudest achievement. In all the rubble at the end of the Second World War, it was a Labour government that had the principles and the ambition to say we were elected to bring in a National Health Service, and that is what we will do. Healthcare free at the point of use. And every day there's a different excuse as to why the documents I revealed last week somehow or other have to be challenged. First of all, they said they didn't believe them, and then I pointed out they were printed by the government themselves. Then they said they were printed by Russians. That took them a few days to do that. They've no evidence whatsoever of that. And then they've said there was no discussion of the sort I said in the documents. Well, in all the hundreds of pages of it, it is very, very clear. One, our NHS is on the table on trade talks with the USA. Two, the patents of medicines will be extended into this country, and that costs us a lot of money. Three, they will go for investor state protection, which in other words is protecting American pharmaceutical companies coming into Britain. And fourthly, they said very clearly in none of our talks is there to be any discussion about climate change or climate emergency in trade arrangements. Sorry, this is nonsense. So I wrote yesterday to President Trump just to say, so he's aware of it before we take office, that any future trade agreement with the United States will not include any of our public services. And that is how it's going to be. A Labour government elected next week, determined to redress the gap between the richest and the poorest. A Labour government determined to give young people chance, hope and opportunity in our society, so they don't have to go into debt to get an education. They do get, through our National Education Service, the apprenticeships they need and deserve, the university courses they need and deserve, the youth centres they need and deserve, youth workers that they need and deserve, and real support for those going through a mental health crisis in our society, and a Labour government determined to deal with the housing crisis. They often say to me, what's your first priority when you take office? There's many, 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 of course there are, but number one for me, end rough sleeping homelessness once and for all in this country. And so, do everything you can in the next 8 days and give yourself an early Christmas present on December the 13th, a Labour government and Labour MPs. Robin Hood had the right idea. He had the right idea, and from Nottingham we learned the lesson. He was a friend of the poor, and he wanted a better society. Labour is on the side of the many, not the few. Thank you very much.
Mr. Corbyn, you said you wanted to speak to President Trump yesterday. Why did you not manage to?
He wasn't at the part of the reception I was at. He was having a discussion with other people, so I didn't have an opportunity to speak to him.
How hard did you try?
I wanted to speak to him, but it wasn't possible.
What would have been the point of telling him to keep the NHS off the table when he's already said that that's not part of any trade deal?
It was not so long ago he said the NHS was part of the deal, and it can't be both things. And if it is off the table, then why is it still included in all the talks? Why did they continue for months having these discussions with the NHS totally on the table? And if we hadn't exposed that last week, I suspect this discussion wouldn't even be happening.
Isn't it slightly embarrassing that you said publicly what you wanted to say to him and then you didn't actually manage to say it?
Not in the slightest, absolutely not in the slightest. Because I've made my view absolutely clear, and I will continue to make that clear, and the Labour government will not be allowing our National Health Service to be undermined by international trade agreements.
Do you think it's important to have good relations with President Trump if you became Prime Minister?
It's important to have good relations with all countries, and of course that includes President Trump, yes.
And how would you do that?
I'd go and meet him, as I would any other leader, work out issues that we agree on and try and persuade him on both trade issues and particularly on climate change and the importance of the Paris Climate Change Accords and COP26, which we'll be hosting in Britain next year, and hope we can go further than Paris, because we cannot go on allowing global warming to carry on at this rate, otherwise we're all at risk.
You are saying today that Labour would save families £6,700. These are fantasy figures, aren't they?
No, absolutely sensible, realistic figures. We increase the basic wage by bringing in a living wage of £10 an hour. We end universal credits, and we control rents in the private rented sector. And all this adds up to an improvement in the living standards of the very poorest people in this country. We have 4 million children living in poverty, 137,000 children with no permanent home to live in. This is simply not right in the 5th richest country in the world.
But you haven't been clear how much your higher taxes would hit families.
We've been very clear that nobody earning under $80,000 a year will pay any more in tax or national insurance, and that corporation tax will go up, but no more than 26%, which is actually lower than it was in 2010, and that won't all happen straight away. It will happen over a period. We're very clear that there has to be proper investment in the future of our country. Proper investment in education, in health and in housing, and of course in infrastructure, to bring the jobs to areas that have had very little investment for a very long time.
But taxing companies more heavily would hit people in terms of wages, prices or pensions.
26% corporation tax is less than in France, less than in the USA, and as I said, lower than it was in 2010. It is, in my view, for the larger companies perfectly bearable. It would not apply to those with a turnover of less than 300,000. They would have a lower rate.
Do you think NATO keeps the UK more secure?
I think NATO is an alliance that is important to be part of, and we are obviously members of it. I want to work with other NATO countries, and I took the opportunity of meeting representatives of many countries last night to discuss issues of tensions with Russia and tensions in Syria at the present time, and surely all the countries can work together to try and bring about a reduction in those tensions.
And do you think it keeps the UK more secure?
We are secure when we have lower tensions with neighbours, so obviously working with people all across Europe and the USA helps to do that.
And NATO helps do that?
Well, NATO we are members of. It was created after the Second World War, and it's changed its focus. I want it to be a focus that helps to bring about understanding and lowering of tensions around the world. And discussion with the French and others, I think there is quite a lot of discussion going on in that direction at the present time.
You used to say that it should be disbanded. What made you change your mind?
Our party is committed to remaining part of NATO, but it's also what we do in NATO and what NATO does itself that's important, and that's why I make the point about the need for criticism of human rights abuses wherever they occur, including in Russia, but also an understanding with other countries so that we do reduce those tensions and we don't recreate the tensions of the Cold War.
And what made you personally change your mind on NATO?
I have always been in favour of a policy of détente and lowering of tensions, and we have decided we will remain in NATO as a party, and that's it.
In 2011 you said it was a danger to world peace. Have you changed that view?
In 2011 I thought the direction NATO was going was a wrong one. I've had discussions with many people, and I want to see a reduction in tensions around the world, because we cannot go on developing in the concept of an arms race. There has to be a process of recognising the real threats in this world are actually terrorism, cybersecurity, and of course the climate crisis that affects all of us, and I think we can all play a part in dealing with those issues.
So I'm just trying to understand, do you think NATO now contributes to world peace?
I think we'll have to contribute to world peace through NATO and any other alliance, principally through the United Nations.
Thank you. It's a week to go till the election. Why do you think your campaign hasn't taken off yet?
Taken off? We've got more people working in our campaign than ever before. We've got thousands of volunteers out all the time campaigning for Labour. We're gaining a lot of party members, and we're getting that message out there that there is an alternative here. The alternative is, do we invest for the future, or do we continue down this terrible road of greater gap between the richest and poorest in our society and simply saying nothing can be done about it? Our campaign offers hope to people, and I'm very proud of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one final thing. ITV Central couldn't send a crew. Could we just ask a generic question about campaigning the East Midlands or something?
Okay.
So, oh yeah, sorry, what was that?
Why are you campaigning in the East Midlands today?
Well, I'm campaigning in all parts of the country, and today I'm in the East Midlands. I'm delighted to be here in the wonderful city of Nottingham with Robin Hood just behind me, and I'm going to Mansfield and other places that I've been to many times over the past 4 years, and we're fighting very hard to gain seats, to win, to get a Labour government, and the road to a Labour government lies through the East Midlands.